Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC 266 is almost here. The main event is Alexander Volkanovski defending his featherweight title against Brian Ortega, and this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction of this fight. I've already done a bunch of other UFC 266 prediction videos. I'll put the links in the description if you guys want to go check those out as well. And do me a favor, if you guys enjoy these prediction videos, make sure to like the video. I really appreciate it. So first off, this fight has been a long time coming. This fight was originally scheduled for UFC 260 in March of this year. It was supposed to be the co-main event on the same card as Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou 2. And the week of the fight, Alexander Volkanovski gets sick, has to pull out of the fight. I was devastated. But I was very hopeful that the UFC would rebook it rather quickly. And next thing you know, the UFC was announcing that they were going to be coaches on The Ultimate Fighter, and I knew that was going to push the fight way down the line, unfortunately. But we are finally here, September, UFC 266 main event, and we are finally going to get Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. And one thing I did find interesting when I was looking into this fight is this is Alexander Volkanovski's first ever UFC main event. The first time he fought for the title against Max Holloway was on UFC 245. The main event of that card was Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. The second time was on UFC 251. The main event was Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal 1. So this is Volkanovski's first ever time being in the main event. I thought that was super interesting. And let's talk about Volkanovski because I believe he's on a path that if he can continue to win, he will go down in history as one of the greatest of all time in the featherweight division. He already has so many great names on his resume. He TKO'd Chad Mendes. That was an amazing win. That was back in 2018 when Chad Mendes was still considered good. Then he went on to beat Jose Aldo in a three-round fight. To beat Jose Aldo in a three-round fight is just an amazing achievement in itself. And then you have the two wins over Max Holloway. And I know what people are thinking. In both of those fights, people argue that Max Holloway won those fights. In the first fight, I think it was very, very close. But I thought Alexander Volkanovski clearly won that fight. I don't think it was a robbery by any means. I thought that was clear cut. Volkanovski won that fight, and it was a unanimous decision. So I don't know how that many people are saying that Max Holloway won that fight. Now, as far as the second fight, which took place at UFC 251, I understand the argument there. That fight was razor close, and I believe it could have went either way. And I wouldn't have cried robbery if Max Holloway would have got that win. But the fight was just super close. I believe Max Holloway got the first two rounds, and I think Volkanovski got rounds 3, 4, and 5. And what I loved about that performance from Volkanovski, and I love fights that just answer questions about guys. And in that fight, we got so many answers about Alexander Volkanovski. He can overcome adversity. He's super composed in there. And that fight against Max Holloway, he was hurt badly in the first round with a head kick. In the second round, he was rocked with an uppercut. He was able to get back up, not get finished and not pack it in. There's some guys when they start to lose, I talk about it plenty of times. They start to lose a fight and they start to pack it in and just try not to get finished. And in that fight, Volkanovski not only lost those first two rounds pretty decisively and got hurt badly in those first two rounds, he continued on. He made adjustments, which I love. When guys make adjustments mid-round, when they're losing a fight, he made adjustments, came out and won that third, fourth, and fifth round. He was more aggressive. He mixed in the grappling. And in that entire fight, and in both Max Holloway fights, he was ripping the leg kicks, inside leg kicks, outside leg kicks. I mean, he threw so many leg kicks, particularly in that second fight. Max Holloway's leg was blood red. And I just thought that was a masterful performance. Even if you want to say he lost, and I get some people are just going to say Max Holloway won that second fight no matter what. Max Holloway is one of the greatest featherweights of all time already. So even so, the fact that Alexander Volkanovski can make a competitive fight with Max Holloway is an achievement in itself. And I just love what he did in that fight. He was able to overcome that adversity. He was able to mix up his game plan. He was able to just make adjustments mid-round or in between rounds and beat Max Holloway on paper, regardless of how you want to look at it. Well, now you have a very tough challenge in Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega fought Max Holloway all the way back in 2019 and just got beat up so badly. I'll never forget that beating. A lot of people were saying his corner should have stopped it. I think eventually his corner did stop. I can't remember if the referee stopped it or his corner stopped it. but it was just a cumulative damage. And by the way, that was actually 2018, not 2019. I just realized when I was looking at his resume here. And he got beat up so badly in that fight that it was one of those scary beatings, similar to the Max Holloway Calvin Kattar fight. It was like, oh man, what are we watching? He took so much damage, but it just showed the toughness of Brian Ortega. There was no way to get him out of there. Max Holloway was just landing everything, and his cardio and his stamina, and was just swarming Brian Ortega and just beating him up. And Brian Ortega basically survived up until whatever. I think it was stopped in between rounds by the doctor or whatever it was. And he took a long time off, which I am very happy to see when guys are in these crazy fights or they take a lot of damage, take some significant time off. So he took from 2018 off. He took from December of 2018 off all the way till October of 2020 when he returned and he fought Korean Zombie. So he came back to another tough test in Korean Zombie. And in that fight, he looked much improved. His striking looked dialed in. He just looked so good. He had great leg kicks in that fight. And a lot of people did not expect him to beat the Korean Zombie. And he beat the Korean Zombie, hurt him multiple times in that fight. And then he earned himself a title shot against Alexander Volkanovski. It was talked about before that fight. The winner of that fight gets the title shot against Alexander Volkanovski. And it's just crazy what he achieved by taking all that time off. He took a fight against an elite competitor in the Korean Zombie. He outclassed him to earn himself a title shot, another title shot. So one fight removed from Max Holloway, the beating that he took, he is fighting for the title, which is super impressive. And one thing I did want to note about that Korean Zombie fight is that Korean Zombie had his moments early. And I truly believe that spinning elbow that Brian Ortega landed, which was just absolutely filthy. Korean Zombie overcommitted on some strikes, got caught with a nasty elbow right on the jaw, dropped, hurt badly. I really believe it was one of those fights, people talk about it all the time, where you get hurt once and you're just out for the rest of the fight. And I really believe that was one of those instances. Ever since that spinning elbow, Korean Zombie just never seemed the same for the rest of that fight. And that happened in the second round. So, I'm not trying to make excuses for Korean Zombie, but I think that was a factor because Korean Zombie was having some success early with the leg kicks. He was landing some shots of his own. He was blitzing in. And, I just think once Ortega landed that spinning back elbow on Korean Zombie, he just was not the same for the rest of the fight. For that to happen that early in the second round, I think it just completely changed the outlook of the fight. But again, that's Ortega's skills. Ortega comes back. He looks so improved in the stand-up. Most people look at him as a jiu-jitsu guy, a submission guy, and for him to come out and just outclass Korean Zombie for the majority of the fight was on the feet. That is a great performance, and that earned him a title shot. That was worth it, honestly. To beat up Korean Zombie in the fashion he did, coming off such a long layoff, was super impressive. And he mixed in the takedowns, but it was majority on the feet, and Korean Zombie's a great striker. And to land that spinning back elbow, I know I keep harping on it, but was just insane. So what do I think is going to happen in this fight? And this is a tough fight to pick, honestly. I believe both guys have a legitimate chance to win. It's really kind of a toss-up in a way. If you look at their skill sets, and then you look at Brian Ortega, who also hasn't fought since October of 2020, so he's had more time to get better and evolve. He's a young guy, so and we've seen what kind of improvement he can have when he's off. He's having back-to-back training camps because he was originally supposed to fight in March. So there's just so many factors to take into account when predicting this fight. But I am going to go Alexander Volkanovski by third round TKO. And I just believe Volkanovski has great stamina. He has great power. He has great striking. He has great leg kicks. Alexander Volkanovski is just so well-rounded. I just don't know if Brian Ortega can outstrike him. And I don't believe Ortega is going to be able to take him down. He's going to have to hurt Volkanovski to get him in a scramble and get him on the ground. I don't think he's going to be able to outright just double leg him and take him down. That's just not going to happen. Volkanovski is a great wrestler. We have never really seen anybody take him down and hold him down with any success. And I don't think Ortega is going to be one of those guys. Ortega has great jiu-jitsu. Ortega has great submissions. But he's one of those guys that doesn't have the best takedowns. If he hurts you, maybe then he can shoot it on a takedown like he did against Korean Zombie. But I just don't believe he's going to be able to take Volkanovski down at will or anything like that. I think his best chance is maybe to rock Volkanovski, and then maybe, Volkanovski initiates a takedown, and maybe he grabs the guillotine because Ortega has some lightning fast submissions. He snatches them up so quick. He kind of reminds me of a featherweight version of Charles Oliveira. Just if you shoot in on him, he immediately starts looking for a submission. We've seen him submit plenty of guys: Cub Swanson, Hanato Moicano, Diego Brandao, just so many submissions, and they've always been just so slick. And he locks them up; they're so tight. But I just don't think he's going to have an opportunity to do that against Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski's so smart; he has such a high fight IQ. He comes out; he'll be blasting the legs early, and he doesn't discriminate. He goes for the inside leg kick, outside leg kicks, and he'll blast them constantly. And, that starts to limit your mobility. And Brian Ortega is very heavy on that lead leg, just very, very heavy on the lead leg. And I think Volkanovski has a speed advantage. I think he has a strength advantage. I think he has a power advantage. Volkanovski has a great jab. He leaps in with like a check left hook all the time. He used it against Max Holloway many of times. And I just don't know, with all the improvements that Brian Ortega has made in his stand up, I just don't know if he's going to be able to outstrike Volkanovski. I mean, we're talking about a Volkanovski that outstruck Max Holloway multiple times in multiple rounds, regardless of how you want to see the entire fights. There was rounds that Volkanovski won on the feet against Max Holloway. And I don't believe that Brian Ortega, he does not have anywhere near the same amount of output as a Alexander Volkanovski. And if Volkanovski pushes the pace, Ortega is going to get tired. Volkanovski has a crazy gas tank. He has unlimited stamina. We've never seen a guy in that second fight, regardless of how you want to look at it, of Volkanovski versus Max Holloway 2. Volkanovski won that fifth round. There's not many guys taking fifth rounds off of Max Holloway, one of the best guys as far as cardio goes in the entire UFC. So Brian Ortega, if Volkanovski really starts pushing the pace against him, landing him, busting him up, Ortega is going to start to fade. And I really think that's going to be the story of the fight. I think Volkanovski's going to come out, use his high fight IQ, beat up the legs, rip the body, land some nice check left hooks, damage Ortega, eventually find that finish in the third round when Ortega starts to wear down. The damage really starts to go into effect on Ortega. And I just think if Ortega wants to win, we have to hope that Ortega's striking has improved so much that he's going to be able to go out there and outstrike Volkanovski. And it's a possibility. I mean, I didn't think Ortega would be able to go out there and outstrike the Korean Zombie, but he did. So maybe he's improved so much since his Korean Zombie fight that he'll be able to go out there and outstrike Volkanovski. I just don't see it happening. And if it ends badly for him on the feet, if he's getting beat up on the feet, what's the other option? What's the avenue to victory? And it's to take Volkanovski down and submit him, or take him down and control him and win rounds that way. But I just don't believe he's going to be able to take Volkanovski down. Volkanovski has great wrestling, and Ortega doesn't have the best takedowns. It's not like he's a Khabib, he's mauling guys to the ground. He has great jiu-jitsu when it gets to the ground, but he has trouble getting those takedowns. Even against Korean Zombie, he had to rock him to really get a takedown. He's not able to just blast double legs or push a guy against the fence and then drag him to the ground. He has to hurt him, then he gets him to the ground. In a way, it's kind of similar to Damian Maia. Damian Maia is deadly off his back or on the ground with submissions, but he didn't have the best takedowns against elite guys, and that's a similar situation here. So if Ortega's not winning on the feet, I don't see another avenue to victory for him. Volkanovski's going to beat him up. He's going to brutalize that leg. Korean Zombie had, great effect with the leg kicks in the first and second round of their fight. And I think Volkanovski has some of the best leg kicks in the game. And not just as far as volume of throwing them, he lands them hard and he really busts up the legs. And I think it'll be similar in this fight. I mean, he did it in the last two fights against Max Holloway, and I think he'll do it more in this fight, especially considering Ortega's so heavy on that lead leg. And I just really don't foresee a scenario where Brian Ortega can win, but his striking is very, very improved. And that's where I say, this is a very competitive fight because, some young guys can just keep coming out and looking so much improved from fight to fight, and he's had a significant amount of time off. So, and he's confident going into this fight. I don't think the improvement of striking is going to be enough to go out there and outclass Volkanovski on the feet. It just is not happening. And Volkanovski has so much power. I think he'll really catch Ortega as he starts to fade, as the hands start to drop, as the leg is battered and the movement is limited. And Volkanovski can just close the distance so fast. I really just think he's going to bust up Ortega and finish him in that third round. That's just what I think is going to happen. So, guys, let me know in the comments, who are you picking in this fight? Are you picking Alexander Volkanovski or Brian Ortega? Make sure to like the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it so much, and I will see you in the next video.